What's going on, everybody? My name is Colin, and today we're breaking down EQ. EQ seems pretty simple on the surface, but honestly, it's one of the most important tools in your entire toolkit. Because it's so fundamental, I think it deserves to be understood deeply, not just as guesswork while you're producing. In this video, I want to cover what EQ is actually doing, how to think about the frequency spectrum in sections. I want you to know how to clean up a mix with intention, and one of my favorite EQ masking techniques that makes sounds sit together super nicely. So let's jump in. At its core, EQ is just changing amplitude or volume, but instead of turning down the volume of an entire sound like utility would, EQ lets you raise or lower specific frequency ranges using band shelves and cuts. As you move the bands around the spectrum, you can hear exactly the part of the sound you're adding or removing. And one thing I highly recommend while doing is using the headphone audition function to isolate those ranges and really train your ears on exactly what point in the spectrum is what sound that you're hearing. Getting carried away. I like to think about the frequency spectrum in sections because each range has a different job, and each range needs to be kept clean in different ways. The first spectrum I want to go over is sub / the low fundamental. Especially for bass music, this is where everything begins. This is your sub, the lowest fundamental of your sound. Down here, I'm listening for one main thing. Is the low end coming through clean? This is where you can hear kick and sub interaction, pumping or unwanted overlap, phase issues, volume inconsistencies in the low end. A super underrated move is just putting an EQ on your master and soloing only the low end to inspect this. This region is also where you can feel the track physically, not just emotionally. This is literal pressure I'm talking about. So keeping your low end cohesive and controlled matters a ton. If this area is noisy or phasey, you can lose clarity, balance, punch, and a huge amount of energy. This can wreck your mix if this isn't clean. Right above your low end here is what I would call your bass. This is where the worlds start colliding. Sub meets mids, warmth meets mud, weight meets clutter. And this area can make or break the impact of your tune. I see a lot of producers slap a dip here on the master and they call it a day. Personally, I'd rather solve this earlier through better arrangement and sound selection. Things like cutting lows from brighter sounds, cutting highs from heavier sounds, and deciding which elements actually deserve the space. This area should be super clean because congestion here can cloud everything above it. This is the voice of your low end and the voice of your mids meeting together, and the crossover between the two needs to be pristine. Moving to our next section here, this is what I like to call the mids. This is where the vocals, leads, and core musical information tend to live. This is your presence, this is your intelligibility, this is the identity. This is where masking becomes a big deal, which is a technique I'll get into in the next steps. You really want to ask which sounds are the key players, what deserves focus, what supports. This is also where stereo decisions become really creative. What sits in the center, what goes wide, what gets layered for depth. I'm all for breaking rules, but I believe you should understand the rules first. Traditional mixing conventions exist because they work. Learn why they work, then bend intentionally. This range is a great place to do that. As we go higher into the range, this is where we get a lot of the character of our mids, a lot like we did with our sub in the bass range above it. This is where attack, texture, definition, and aggression really tend to live. For bass music especially, this is often where a lot of the timbre lives, and because so much important elements live here, they all need to speak clearly. Listen to how your layers communicate. Don't just stack energy here blindly. Moving to this range of about 4,000 to 12,000, this is where we get hi-hat, body, brightness, top-end detail, and presence and leads and chords. And honestly, I'm more than willing to cut this region more than people expect. Sometimes your chords don't need all that top end. Sometimes effects are crowding your hats. Sometimes brightness is just clutter. Not everything needs to be shiny. Sometimes making room creates more excitement than adding more information. Finally, this last range, or generally everything above 10K, This is the air in our track. This is that ultra high-end presence region. This is all of our sparkle, all of our space, all of our ear candy, all of our breath. A lot of what lives up here is noise, but that noise can be beautiful and add a lot of context. There are also frequencies way up here that you can remove without missing much, especially if you're optimizing for loudness. So even air should be intentional. If I start my high cut all the way up at 22,000 hertz, and I start dragging down, I can't even hear a difference until we hit 13.5 thousand hertz. So all of that information from 15,000 hertz and up, generally most people cannot hear. So now that we understand the spectrum, how do we create room when sounds compete? This is one of my favorite techniques, EQ masking. Let's say it together, EQ masking. Let's say I have a lead and chords and a bass underneath. And the lead is my priority. What I want to do is boost the frequencies in the lead that define its character most, the part of the lead that my soul loves the most. Listening to these two elements play together, we can definitely hear both of them speaking, but we can do a little bit to give them each space in the room so that they feel more cohesive when they're adding back together. These are the spots of the lead that I really want the listener to focus on. These are the harmonics of the lead too that I feel like carry the identity of the lead the most. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this EQ and throw it on the chords. And then I'm going to use our scale feature here and turn all these boosts into little cuts. Now I'm literally carving space in the chords for the lead. And now hear what happens when I play this together. Both sounds are now living in the same region without fighting. That is huge. You're not just reducing clutter, you're prioritizing information, and that is what I call mixing. There's also a more surgical version of doing this by using soothe with sidechaining. And what's cool is that you can watch the frequencies duck dynamically based on what the lead is doing. To set this up, I'm going to turn on the sidechain feature in soothe, go to our sidechain input, and then go to the lead, which is what I want the input to be to determine our sidechain output. To make sure that I'm listening to the lead, even though I have my chords soloed here, I'm going to press play with this headphone icon on. And you'll see it's playing our lead and also doing EQ cuts depending on what the lead is doing. And if I turn up our depth, we can hear exactly the cuts happening that are reacting to the lead that we have. And to hear these two work together, just turn off the headphone icon. This is super powerful stuff, but personally, I love the static EQ carving a little bit more because it shapes the tonal character of a sound consistently over time. Dynamic resonance suppression can be cleaner, but static moves often feel more intentional and musical to me. There's a place for both. Neither is wrong. They're both fantastic. Honestly, I think building your EQ instincts is one of the most important muscles you can develop as a producer. EQ helps at every stage: sound design, cleaning sounds, mixing, mastering, problem solving, creative shaping. It's never just corrective, it's creative, and it should never be slept on. What do you think about this EQ method? Is this something you already use in your productions? And did I miss anything? Drop in the comments. I'd love to hear your approach to EQ. And if you're interested in going deeper, check out the Music City Accelerator program linked below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.